I have understand that he has introduced me. That's it's true. Okay, but I have to apologize first of all that I'm not speaking in your language, but my knowledge of the Slovakian language is very bad. I can tell you that, and that's the reason why I'm going to do it in English. I think even in the Brexit period, it's allowed to speak it. Could change, Mr. Anglade, for a little bit more use of French in the future. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I want to say to Ivan and to all the friends of Progressive Slovakia, it is amazing to participate in Slovakia and in a Visegrad country to this meeting and to this conference. And I want to talk with you about what I hope will be one of the core values of your movement in the future. And that is to be the pro-European movement, and let's say, and let's hope, maybe the only real pro-European movement and political movement in Slovakia in the future. That is what I hope that you're going to do, and the way you're going to choose. Because there are enough populists and nationalists in Europe today, and certainly also in Slovakia. I don't know very well the political scene in Slovakia, but I know at least a number of MEPs from your country. There was one who was a few weeks with us, I can tell you. You can imagine who it was. After a few weeks, whoop, he was out. Apparently because we were too pro-European in our message. But I'm very lucky that you started your movement and your program Congress today and not last year. Because if you had invited me last year to this Congress, it should be a very depressive introduction or speech that you will hear. Today, I have to tell you that I'm more optimistic about Europe, and that's also the reason why I ask you to be pro-European in your approach of the problems in Slovakia. Why? Because in the meanwhile, in 1 year, since Brexit, a number of things happened in Europe. Everybody has said after Brexit, oh, you're going to see it. Brexit is only the start. What we will see is a domino effect. Other countries, Frexit, followed by Nexit, the Dutch, followed by Dexit, the Danish, let's say, and then by Oxit, you know, Oxit, the Austrians going out because Hofer, the candidate for the president election, that's what he said. And at the moment that he said it, he lost, in fact, the presidential elections. And in the, how many rounds they had needed? The third round, I think. There was a problem with I don't know what anymore, so don't laugh with your friends. But in any way, in the so-called third round of the election, 300,000 votes went from Hofer towards Van der Bellen. Why? Because Hofer said, yeah, maybe we're gonna leave the European Union and the Eurozone. And 300,000 people say, no way, and went to vote for Van der Bellen. And the same happened a few months later in the Netherlands, where everybody said, oh, the Netherlands, Wilders, he's gonna become the biggest party, and it will be impossible to govern the Netherlands without Wilders, without the extreme right-wing anti-migrant party. And who won the election? Two pro-European parties, D66 and the Green Party. And both today, each other, not combined, each other are as big as Wilders. So everybody is talking about, Wilders, the far right in the Netherlands. Well, D66, a liberal left-wing party, is as big as him. And the Greens as big as him. And both, well, you can count. I'm a lawyer, so I'm not a mathematician, so it can could make that I make a mistake. But together they are as bigger, 2 times bigger than Wilders. And then happens what happened in France. In France, where a president is elected based on a pro-European program. A president, a candidate for the presidency, Emmanuel Macron, who said, look, European sovereignty is more important than, in fact, French sovereignty. If you have said it in France 10 years ago, you were disqualified. You could not even participate. Today, you win the elections because people are not stupid. They have huge criticism towards the European Union. I have huge criticism towards the European Union. We all have criticism towards the European Union. It has to change, it has to be reformed. But to destroy it, no bloody way. That we don't want to destroy the European Union. And that's exactly what happened with Brexit. That is an attempt. Boris Johnson, he's continuing today, if you have not followed here the debates, maybe you have followed on your Twitter account or your Facebook. Well, look a little bit. The latest Facebook post by Boris Johnson, who is really saying, no, we want a hard Brexit. It has to be, we want to go out of every policy of the European Union. We want a little bit of a deal like CETA, like we made with the Canadians on trade, and that's it. A little bit of security above that, and that's enough. So Brexit has created really a shock in the public opinion. But instead of a domino effect, it has created a reverse domino effect. And Europe is back. And that doesn't mean that Europe works today. That doesn't mean that Europe doesn't need reform. No, what we have to do now, we have a common responsibility. You in Slovakia, we in Belgium, Anglade in France, who's a bigger country, so he has a big responsibility. And in a number of other countries, and in the whole European Union, we have a responsibility to reform it, to make it work, to do an in-depth change in the European Union, who has to become a real European Union. Because what is the problem in the European Union? It is not a union. It is, in fact, a loose confederation of 27 member states, still based on the unanimity rule. How can it work? There is a country not far from here in the north, you know it, Poland, that disappeared for 1 century because of the unanimity rule. There was a moment that the Polish parliament decided all its decisions by unanimity and never took a decision and disappeared for more than 100 years. And that is what we have to escape in Europe. Europe is still an intergovernmental body of 28, 27 heads of states and heads of government coming together 4, 5, 6 times a year in Brussels and managing the European Union. How can they do it? How is it possible? I was prime minister for a number of years. You were prime minister of this country. That is not our job. It is a European government with European institutions, a European parliament elected by the citizens, and a European Senate representing the nation states. They have to govern. It's not like, 4 times a year, 5 times a year, I go to Brussels, I'm going to govern it. I make always the comparison, if the US will be governed like Europe, how should it work? It should be the 50 governors of the US coming together 5, 6 times a year in Washington, deciding by unanimity on all key issues. And there is one from Alaska saying, no, I don't agree, everything stops. Nothing is happening. It should be not 1 president, it should be at least 3 presidents. 3 Trumps, you can imagine what it will be. 3 Obamas, I cannot, that I can still have. 3 Trumps is a little bit too much. And it should be a system in which one or other of the states is saying, well, look, California, for example, the dollar, it's not a bad currency, but I don't like it. I will not participate. I will continue with the Spanish peseta, like it was the case until the mid of the 19th century. Or another state like Florida saying, well, yeah, the American Border and Coast Guard, nice organization, but I'm gonna not participate. I'm gonna do it myself, far better. Or for example, Washington saying, well, the FBI, also a nice organization, but I'm gonna do it myself. That is the way we are governing Europe for the moment, with opt-ins and opt-out, with enhanced corporations, and then with the whole discussion also in this country, the core of Europe. For me, the core of Europe is very simple. There is one core, and in one core, all these countries have to be in the core for all the policies, without an exceptions and without rebates. So, it's nonsense. It's nonsense to have this discussion. We need to have a European Union that works. And if we want a European Union that works, that will be a European Union that in some cases will be smaller than today. For example, the European Commission, ladies and gentlemen. We don't need a European Commission of 28. First of all, the name, commissaire, it's a little bit like the Soviet Union at the time. And at the same time, 28, we don't have even enough competences in this 1% budget, this little budget of the European Union, to give work to 28 commissioners. We need a small European government, smaller than today, 12, 15 people, not more, elected, the head elected directly by the European citizens on transnational lists. That's the reason why we will push, together with France, with Italy, with a number of other member states, for that idea. People have the right to elect their leaders in Europe, and not only the national representatives in a parliament. That is what we need. With the governance of the Eurozone, I'm always saying a state can maybe use a currency of no currency and use the currency of another country that exists. There are countries who don't have their own currency and we're using the dollar or the euro. But the opposite doesn't exist. A currency cannot exist without a state authority behind, without a budget, without a treasury, without an economic government, without a minister of finance. Next and besides a central bank. Fortunately, we have this, because otherwise we were in big trouble. We need also a change in our foreign policy, a European Defence Union. It is obvious that we need to create it. And it's obvious because I believe that NATO has still his role to play. I don't want to duplicate NATO. We need a European Defence Union as the European pillar of that North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And why we need it? Because we need to do an effort for our defense. You know what we spend today in Europe on defense? We spend more or less 42% of the American military expenditures. That is the second biggest budget worldwide. That's 3 times more than the Russian Federation. That is what we spend on military. But the problem is what is the output of it? We are only capable, with this 42% of the American expenditures, to do 10 or 15% of the operations of the American army. So I told you already that I'm not a mathematician. Nevertheless, I was Minister of Budget for a number of years in Belgium, but that is not a contradiction, because a Minister of Budget, he don't need to know anything about mathematics. The only thing what he needs to know is the word no. That's the only thing. All the rest is So I'm not a mathematician, but I know if you spend 42% of the American expenses, you can only do 10 to 15% of their operation. You're 3 times less effective, and that is no surprise, because we duplicate everything. We have all our strategic air transport. We have all our tactical troops with helicopters that we put on the battlefield. We have all our medical services. We have everything we duplicate in Europe. And that's the reason that with 42% of the expenditures, we can only do 10, 15%, say the optimist, of the operation. So therefore we need a European Defence Union, because there is the added value. In the private sector, all multinationals know what the added value is when you cooperate together, transnational. Only we, as politicians, we have a fear to do so. And the fear is simple, because we fear to lose our power. Because we fear to give sovereignty and power on another level, was more indicated also on migration issues. Migration is the topic for the moment. But the migration flow towards the European Union is naturally the consequence of the fact that there doesn't exist a European migration policy. There doesn't exist, for example, a European border and coast guard. Now it exists. We started and we have given it a budget of 250 million euro. Compare it with the US. That is Homeland Security, that is $62 billion. And so we think with our 250 million that we will manage it in the same way. That's nonsense, naturally. European Border and Coast Guard should be, in fact, the start of a migration and asylum policy, and not the end game as we do it now. We need also a new asylum system, not Dublin, because Dublin, that's purely national egoism. That's saying, okay, it's the problem of the Greeks, it's the problem of the Italians, and I can tell you, they say then, okay, we try to escape to our responsibility, and they let them flow into Europe. And we need also legal migration. The only way to combat and to fight against illegal migration is to organize in a decent way with blue cards, like the Americans have, with green cards, like the Canadians have also with green cards, legal migration. That's the only way to tackle it. And all the rest is putting the head into the sand and giving room to nationalists, to populists, to use migration, while the solution is obvious. And the same, I told it already, on the fight against terrorism. In every terrorist attack since 2004, 2005, first in Madrid, afterwards in London, with all the other attacks afterwards, every time we have seen, when we make a true analysis of what happened, that the perpetrators were already known, mainly in other countries of the European Union, but that the information was not shared with the country where the attacks were going on. And that's the reason why I'm saying, yeah, exchanging information, better coordination between the different, I cannot hear it anymore, that word. What we need is creating capacities and capabilities on the European level for a number of crimes, as is the case with the FBI in the US, as it is the case in Germany with the Bundeskriminalamt, who became a real department at the moment after a number of terrorist attacks, and also the attacks in the Olympic Games in Munich. That we need to do. And that's the only way to tackle terrorism. The terrorists, they know no borders. It are our intelligence services, our police services who still know borders and who are not really, if it is needed, exchanging the necessary information of it happens too late. That is the way forward for the European Union. That means not that we will be active in everything, that nation states will disappear. Only when there is an added value that you can prove, then there needs to be action on the European level, and it needs to be scrutinized within a European democratic framework with a small government, a European Commission replacing that, and with, at the same time, also an oversight by the European Parliament. That is the way forward in a world who has changed dramatically. Who can believe that one European nation, even France or Germany, can defend its interest without the help, the support in a European framework? The world of tomorrow, dear friends, the world of today already, is not a world of nation states. Sorry. It's a world of empires. And let's hope that it will be the empires of the good and not the empires of the bad. Maybe you have an idea about an empire of the bad, but okay, you can put yourself. That is the world of tomorrow. China, for example, that's not a nation, that's a civilization. That's Han, with so many ethnies. Accepting that. India is 2,000 ethnies. It are 20 different languages. It are at the same time 4 big religions, and it's the biggest democracy in the world. That is a world power. And that is also the case of America, where maybe tomorrow Spanish will be spoken more than English. Okay, that's another point. To tell you that it is not, oh, America, that is one unity. No, that are 50 states with 50 different constitutions. At least we are already further than them, because we have an agreement on abolishing the death penalty, where they still have a debate about it between the different states. But that is the world of tomorrow. Russia, America, China, India, and eventual other states. And in that, the only way to defend our interests, or economic interest, or human interest, defend our values, were under threat, not only outside the Union, also inside. When I think to Mr. Orban 2, and not Orban 1. Orban 1, that is the Orban that I have known when I was part of the meetings between the Benelux and the Visegrad in 2000. That was another Orban. That was the liberal Orban. Now he became an illiberal Orban. It's the opposite. So, but it's not only a question outside, it's also a question inside when I think to Poland and when I look to Hungary. Well, to defend these interests, to defend these values, there is only one common future, and it is Europe. And in this Europe, you have to play as big a role as Germany, as France, as the founding fathers of the Benelux, as Italy, as whatever country. Because it is these 27 countries, and maybe tomorrow again more. When I look, for example, to the Balkan countries, I think always the best way to solve the problems and the tensions there is to put them in the same family. At least that's better than to put soldiers on the ground, as we are doing now. Well, it's only then and you, in that way, that we're gonna defend a European future for the next generation. And again, only one message to you is take the lead in the European fight. Let's all the other parties go into the populist and the nationalist direction. It will be your victory because you are the only one and true pro-Europeans. Thank you very much, and I welcome.